Well, hello everyone for another, it's not an episode, but another interview or a conversation in the Polyvagal theories series that I'm putting on. And I'm super excited today because I have with me Mona Dيلاهوكي. Mona is a licensed clinical psychologist and mother who has cared for children and their families for more than 3 decades. And Mona has, the author of Beyond Behavior, and her most recent book is Brain Body Parenting. I'm super thrilled to have you, Mona, here with me. And I want to thank you so much for Beyond Behavior. It was my introduction for polyvagal theory. And I think in a bit of few years, my kids can thank you as well, because I have become a better parent by really understanding, this work and how really to look at what is happening with our kids, not focus on the behavior, which is completely a different paradigm, what I have felt. So that's a very heartfelt thank you. And I'm sure everyone I've talked to, I've always bring up Beyond Behavior, because it's really, it illustrates what is really important, and we miss that in a lot of our parenting.
Well, thank you for such a lovely introduction, Manal, and I'm thrilled that the books, especially Beyond Behaviors, resonated with you, and it's so big, like this whole different universe of talking about how we understand ourselves and how we understand our children opens up so many doors. So I'm thrilled you're talking about it. I'm thrilled it helped you feel more equipped, and maybe that you got this parenting thing, a little bit easier than you might have without the information.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of the biggest thing is it's who we are and what we are doing as parents. And after, of course, looking at reading the book and looking at all the incidents and how we co-regulate and we co-dysregulate.
Yes.
And, it's just like, oh my goodness, I went to the whole, so many experiences, and I looked at it, and thankfully with the nervous system perspective, that guilt and shame was not as intense, because I didn't know.
Excuse me.
I didn't have this information. It's something that I don't have control of then. And I did what I could do. So that was a very lovely thing. You begin brain body parenting with what I feel is one of the most important things that we, as parents, we need to understand is personalizing our parenting. So give us a brief on what do you mean by that? It's not a clear-cut 1, 2, 3 steps.
Yes. So personalizing, another word we might use is customizing our parenting. So a lot of advice in the way we think about parenting is that you have different rules or different concepts. So you should do this when your child does that. Yeah. And those rules are made for, kind of more a generic idea, like all children need this and all parents should say that, and this is the script that you might use in a certain situation. That's not to say that sometimes a useful script can be helpful, but the big idea is that we customize how we are interacting with our children based on the child. So based on that child's brain and body. So just think about, like, if you go to, have you ever been to Chipotle? It's a restaurant where you can choose the different things you want to put on your burrito, and everyone has, they want one scoop of this and a little scoop of rice and more beans or no onions and extra cheese. Everybody has their own like preferences. And our children are no different. They have these brains and bodies, what we call a nervous system, that require different things from us at different times. And when we look at the child rather than the rule, then we have this roadmap that is much more rich, and also that's personalized or customized to our child, not to some general idea or rule.
Yeah, and it makes it more relational, and that's one word I was new to me was neuro-relational framework, and can you explain a little bit about that, and maybe we could then go into beyond behavior and the three kind of pathways, or the green, red, and blue. So if anyone listening to this for the first time, they can have an understanding of what that is.
Of what that is. Great. Yes. The neuro-relational framework. This is such a great, it's such a great phrase. And actually it was coined by a researcher, a therapist, Dr. Connie Lillis. And she called this big framework of looking at children more holistically, looking at our humans more holistically, the neuro-relational framework, because number one, we are always communicating through our relationships. All development happens through the relational modality, right? Little babies, everything that happens to them has to do with our relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
They can't take care of themselves. So what I like to say is the vehicle that drives all development forward towards health is relationships. And then the neuro part is that we are always, as humans, communicating from one nervous system to the next. So our brains are always communicating on a verbal level, but also on a subconscious level too, because there have been studies show that emotions are contagious. So if a child, if we see our child, or a child sees another child having an emotion, that can spread. And so we have to understand that it's the relationship and the brains and the bodies communicating in real time. It's just a very holistic framework, a way to think about how we interact with our children and how we interpret their behaviors and their emotional tone.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's what, at least for me personally, it wasn't what I was paying attention to. I think when we focus on the verbal cue, verbal kind of instructions or orders, like, okay, you know what, be quiet, do this. And, many times if they're orders, or even if it's something less ordery, if that's a word. But when I am in a kind of a sympathetic or kind of anxious space, I did not realize that what my children are picking up is not what I'm saying. The words I'm saying is just like, does not exist. They're picking up on my anxiety, my tension, and because they're young, they don't know what to do with it. They become anxious and they start acting up. And then we have this unfortunate, escalation of, all of that. And unfortunately, many times it's put on the child, like, oh, the child is misbehaving, but the child was misbehaving because their sense of safety or anxiousness is their sense of safety is not there.
Yeah, and it's not that it's not that we're trying to make our kids anxious, right? We have the best intentions. This is something that is kind of something that we don't really think about as what we call our physiological state, or our nervous system, our autonomic or automatic nervous system, how deeply that impacts other people. But many of us, we don't we haven't thought about it that way.
Exactly.
And that's why I used the polyvagal theory as one of the theories in my conceptualization of behaviors as only the tip of the iceberg, right? That the behaviors are the signals, very useful signals of what's happening inside a person's body, really feeding up information to the brain, and that we should move away from behaviors as the target of our interventions or parenting and view them as these beautiful signals that helps us understand ourselves and our children better.
Yeah. I love that iceberg in Beyond Behavior. And I've used it actually because I did parenting coaching for some time. And I've always used that. It's and unfortunately, that's what we most think of. So can you take us through the different kind of pathways or different states? And you make it very easy. And I love that it's very accessible. It's like green, blue, and red. And
yes, we don't have to use big scientific words. We can, although it's interesting that these colors are kind of a model for representing the autonomic nervous system. You don't even have to remember that. We just think about your brain and body, because we're never just a head or a body. We're always both. So yeah, the colors are really useful. And again, these colors were suggested by a colleague of mine, Dr. Lillis, who associated these colors with different states or pathways of our nervous system. So really quick, there are three. I'll start with green. Mm-hmm. The green pathway is where a human is feeling calm inside. You are feeling safe generally. And by safe, I don't mean just like in your head safe, but your body feels comfortable. And you're sensing a safe state inside your body. So you're sensing that you're not needing to fight or leave a situation, but you're ready for interacting. You're ready for play, for conversations, for learning. So that green pathway, you can look at a child's or your own features, such as how fast or slow the body's moving. If your body is not kind of compelled to move really fast, and you have kind of the look on your face that suggests that you are in a state of calm, and it could be different looks for different people. But your body is kind of in a place where it is relaxed and you're available for social communication. That's why Dr. Porges calls it the social engagement system. So green is like a green light. This is where we can ask our children to stretch and to, maybe to learn something new. This is where children want to play and or have a good time. So, and that's when adults feel most in control. That's when we're at our best, is when we're in that green ventral vagal pathway.
When we remember all the good things that we read about in other books and what we need to be doing and all the good stuff.
Yes.
And really find a way to do the things that what matters to us. We pay attention to those. Those are the times that, and I think with getting to know that pathway or that state for ourselves as parents, what makes us and to get to know our kids of like, oh, okay, so this is the time when I want to start like a big topic or say, oh, maybe you should watch less,
Yes, make an ask that's uncomfortable. Yes, this is when you want to do it.
Yes, because the other two pathways, which are there for very good reasons, are not the place when our kids or us would be more receptive.
100%. Mm-hmm. So when you feel, if you've ever felt yourself start to not feel so good inside. Like, let's just say, like inside, your heart might start to be a little faster, or you feel sweaty, and you're all of a sudden feeling like maybe either anxious, or you need to move, or you need to say something really fast or yell, or you observe your child having a reaction where all of a sudden they're not calm in their body, but the main feature is that their body is moving. Maybe they are running away from you. Maybe they're kicking or hitting or spitting, or screaming. Maybe the look on their face is that their eyes are squinted, or their eyes are big, wide open, looking all over the room. The main sense is that the body is not feeling calm and what we call regulated. It is feeling like it has to protect itself. This is subconscious, meaning the child is not planning it. Mm-hmm. But as we say, the tantrum throws the child. The child doesn't throw the tantrum. This is a nervous system driven pathway that is designed to help us get back to the green.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a new way of looking at this red pathway, this is now the red. And this red we can think of as protective to the nervous system and not intentional misbehavior. So we now have a new way of looking at a child who is doing something that we consider a challenging behavior, a behavior that we don't want, right? That is not necessarily great. Like if they're, kicking, and we have to keep everybody safe, but we can view these red pathway behaviors through a compassionate lens, because we can now see them as part of the human stress response.
Yeah, it's like when they storm out of the room and they go into their room and slam the door.
Yes. And it's really hard not to take that personally, right?
Yes.
It's painful as a parent, but you can see that, especially if it happened very fast and all of a sudden they need to escape us. Think about it as, something has triggered a stress response. And we don't necessarily have to take it personally, like, what did I do wrong? But we can come at it with curiosity and with reflection and observation, awareness, like, wow, something triggered that child's what we call stress detection system to feel uncomfortable, to detect some level of threat. It's not what we did to them, it's how their body is reacting to that input. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. And yeah, this door slamming, it took me a long time not to really disattach that, what we see as kind of a disrespect or attach meaning to it. So it's like, yeah, it's wanting to move things very fast, and that's what it is. And it also reminded me of the many times that happened in the past. And what I did is storm back into the room and gave a big, nice lecture of that made the thing worse. So it just, and I say that not, because I know that this happens with every parent, that, of all of that. And we really, at that time, we think we are doing the right thing. We are trying to get, of course, when that happens, we get into, we get that kind of reaction in our system as well. So we're also moving out, but in time, we get to come back to understanding that we are the parent and we are the adult, and maybe we can take a breath and take time to say, okay, you know what? As long as there's no danger to their life, they could, stay in. And once I started doing that, with my kids, like, oh yeah, this makes so much more sense. This is more productive for everyone. But it's it feels hard because it goes against what we learn in controlling kids' behavior, how to discipline a child, and all of these, you know, things that, you know, wanting to reason with child.
Yes, yes. And it does. And it may not, this type of response to, you know, running away or slamming a door, we may not have had a response of curiosity and giving this child some space and the benefit of the doubt as what in our own childhoods. Yes. So from our, what we call our working model, our internal model of in our mind of what that means could signal, as good parents as we all are trying to do the best we can. I believe that we're all doing the best we can with the resources we have to try to run in there and correct the situation, to teach them a lesson really fast, to let them know, you know, what they did wrong and how they can make it better. That's an urge that I completely understand. And we can also expand now to think about, again, the behavior is not as the target, but as the signal. And then we become more curious. And maybe it could also help the parent feel less anxious and maybe less activated, I should say, because sometimes if we code that behavior as disrespect, as not using their words to solve a problem, all these things we have in our mind, like you did something wrong. If we change the lens, if we shift the lens to kind of this compassionate, deeper understanding of behaviors, it really helps also take some of the pressure, I think, away from the parent of that. You don't have to have a teaching moment every time your child gets out of control. It won't really work anyway.
I remember that exact, you know, kind of sentence. One of my friends, she looked at me, she said, Manal, not every moment should be a teaching moment. Just let it go. And I think with all our, you know, best effort in trying to do the right thing. And we have to give ourselves such credit for how big a responsibility parenting is and how hard we want to get it right. I mean, honestly, we really want to get it right and we want to do it right. And many of us were trained in more of a model of you have to deal with the behavior as it happens and help the child shift the behavior to something more positive or help them understand why they made a bad choice. That's kind of our urge, is to help the child with these methods that are now kind of looking like they're a little outdated. Absolutely. So then we have the blue state.
Then we have the blue. So yeah, so think about your own experience, and sometimes you're feeling calm and really like your parenting mojo is right there. You're doing a great job parenting. And then other times we can just get triggered into our own red state, as our child can, like we're just like not solidly in our bodies and calm. And then there's this other main pathway that is described as, that I call the blue pathway. And in that pathway, there is the need on the part of the nervous system to kind of conserve energy. So there's less movement rather than more. The child may appear to be, or you may feel disconnected from other people, kind of in a place where you don't want to communicate. You're not playful. You may isolate. Children may kind of be on the edges and looking at other children, or maybe even turning away and not wanting to play, and holding a lot of this kind of lack of energy. And I guess I should clarify that these theorized pathways, we all go through the red, the blue, and the green throughout the day, because they are designed, you know, our nervous system is designed to manage stress, to handle changes, and to use these different pathways to survive and thrive. Yeah. So we're not going to be worried about a child who gets kind of quiet and disconnected for an hour, or has these big spikes, because those are natural. Those are part of being human. As we gain our social and emotional development over time, and each person is on their own timetable, we learn strategies to help calm ourselves and regulate ourselves. That's called self-regulation. But these pathways we would not want to be, I don't want parents to worry about if you see all these different colors throughout the day, because those are expected. But if your child or yourself feel like you're living in one of these, like if you are in a blue pathway for days or weeks or months, when you're really feeling, or your child is not wanting to play, it looks like they're tired. First of all, I would have a meeting with the pediatrician and make sure that there's nothing going on from a from a medical standpoint. But so think about these pathways as flexible and part of the human experience. And then when we might want to seek support or get a consultation is if you have a child who is in the red, like 80% of the day for months and months, or if they are very in the blue, again, 70-80% of the day for weeks and months, then we want to wonder why. We just want to think about that. But other than that, this is just a fun way of kind of tracking your nervous system. And I will also say that there are blended states. So there are combo zone, like red and blue, could be a hypervigilant child. So we can play around with those. The science is, there are researchers looking at all this, and it's very interesting science. But for us parents, I think the construct is useful because it gives us a new way to understand challenging behaviors.
And a new way to understand our children. And I think, I don't remember where in the book exactly, but you mentioned it, I think, all over the books, is the relational is. And I think that what, we don't want to focus, we focus so much on the behavior and we forget the child. I think that's the one thing you said. And what really, I'm sure all parents, what they want to do is have a good relationship with their kids, because when we get to that point, then they would listen. And that has been my experience of like, okay, let's work with with what's going on now, the behavior, and kind of got myself to learn about all the things that, I could let this go. It's not going to be the end of the world. It's, because we get so much pulled in different directions with, devices, how much you want to, how much they're exposed to internet and social media and all that. And my thing was with food and eating healthy. So, but I realized with all this, it's the relationship is not destroyed, but it's affected negatively because we want to focus on that thing. But once we kind of establish the relationship and establish that green zone together, things falls in place. They want to do the right thing. They do have this. There's this dialogue of like, I'm going to do, I want to make mama happy. I want to make dad happy. They do have that. And
they do. They want to do well. Yes, I completely believe that. They do. They want to do well. And it actually, when we what I found in what I write about is that when we give the child the benefit of the doubt, when we believe that we can have a very generous view of their behaviors and believing that their nervous system is that all behaviors are useful in some way, rather than this fear of behaviors, or we get, like you said, and again, with so much understanding and compassion, hyper-focused on one thing, like we want to have them eat a certain way, or develop healthy habits. And then we're really just focused on that rather than on building that green pathway together. It really, it seems to be a more natural way to relate to our children. And I think parents feel a lot of pressure for behavior management, and our world does too.
Yeah. In a recent post on social media, you talked about masking, and I think that's a very important thing to understand as parents, because kids go to school, they spend most of their day, almost 7-8 hours a day, or something. They would spend more time interacting with people at school than sometimes with us as parents. And you talk about masking, and I've that's something that does happen. And then can you speak more about that?
Yeah, it's talked a lot, this phenomenon of kind of hiding or camouflaging your true feelings or inclinations, or what you want to say, or how you are in the world, hiding or camouflaging that in order to appear like more like everyone around you, is known as masking. And we hear about it a lot in the neurodivergent community, also communities of autistic children who are given, the message that they need to be compliant or fit in and act in a certain way that is neurotypical. But I think that many children, not just neurodivergent children, but I think the range of humans often mask. And that means that you might have a child like at school, like say you have a child who they come home from school and they just start to cry and tell you about something that happened at school that made them so sad or so kind of anxious. And you'll hear it and you go, oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry that happened. And then maybe that happens over and over again. You'll mention it to the teacher, and the teacher might say, they just seem fine to me. I didn't notice anything. They're a great student. They're doing well. Well, sometimes we don't realize that the cost on the inside is invisible to the world, because the child is really trying so hard to be a good student, to comply, to please the teacher. And so I really think we can look at that and wonder what's really going on inside, and maybe model for our kids that, it's okay to ask for help, or to be vulnerable, or to have a strategy to feel safe when they're not with us, rather than masking how they're really feeling, very jumbled up, like maybe red on the inside, but blue or kind of green looking on the outside.
And that you mentioned that the child who would come and say, oh, this happened to me, but many children, that's been my experience, they wouldn't say anything. But what they do is they will have a snarky kind of rude reply with like, oh no, when they come home, and
yes,
home is a safe environment. They don't.
Yes, they will all of a sudden lose it at home. Yeah.
And then that becomes even escalated and becomes, something that it's not pleasant either. So the poor child would have an unpleasant experience at school and an unpleasant experience at home. But
yes,
that comes from us not knowing as parents that, I think these tiny, clues of their kind of not wanting to look at at you, or they want to go to the room, or they want to run to the bathroom, or they want to do something, is to understand that might be their experience they've had. And we want to think that children, what do they have, to stress them out when they're in sixth grade, but it's a lot of stress that goes on in the school. And I know we're getting too close to the end, but I want to speak to a very important thing you talked about in brain body parenting, and I am not sure in Beyond Behavior, is self-care and self-compassion. And you say, compassion for your history. And that's one of the things that I've also focused on with dealing with parents, is like self-care for parents. It's not a luxury. It's not, it's a necessity. If you want to be, a good enough parent, self-care is essential. So if you could talk about that, and why do you feel that that's important?
Yeah, I do. I had a whole chapter in brain body parenting on it. That's how important it is. And when we think about, I have a different view of self-care. Self-care, like sometimes when we say the word, it sounds like maybe, going to get your nails done or going to the gym. And really what I think at the foundation of what we're talking about in terms of care of the self starts with something that doesn't take any extra time, but takes a mind shift. And that is self-compassion, which is allowing ourselves to know that there is no way in the world to parent perfectly. It's impossible, because the person that you are with is not you. They are a different human, and they have different nervous systems. So starting with self-compassion for ourselves on how hard this is, and the knowledge that we don't have to get it right all the time, because none of us would have survived if perfection was the goal. So all we have to really do is a good enough job, but also we can repair whenever we want. When we make a mistake, we can repair it with our child. So self-compassion is at the core. And then I think this idea of self-awareness will allow us to give ourselves what we can practically. So many parents are not privileged enough to have space and time to, maybe if you're feeling like really bad and you're feeling red or blue or jumbled up, to take a walk, or to call a friend. Maybe you can't, maybe you're at work, or maybe your toddler needs you. But to the greatest extent you can, in the book, I describe things like micro moments, which could take 5 to 10 seconds of things we can do to reset our nervous system, up to hours of things we can do, like having a standing time where you meet with a dear friend, because social connection is, we talk about the body budget in the book too. Like, so social connection feeds our body budget as parents. And oftentimes the parenting journey feels very lonely, because we are giving out a lot. We're making a lot of deposits in our children, but who's putting deposits into us? And a great researcher about parenting, Sunitha Luther, said, who's mommying mothers? Like, who's mothering you? We all need that rocking, that care, that connection coming into us. So take great care of yourself as much as you can, starting from how you think about yourself, but just this compassionate awareness of your state and what's going on. That's a good start too.
Yeah, micro moments are really important. I think building that up with, listening to music, looking at, having flowers, looking up at the sky, jumping up and down for a few minutes.
Having a cold glass of water or tea, whatever calms you.
Yes. Well, Mona, before I leave you, what's the learning edge that you're having with parents, or if there is, what are the new discoveries that you're excited about or want to explore and curious about?
Oh, I can tell you the world is of how we can use science to better understand ourselves and our children is exploding. So I am in a group of researchers, therapists who are looking at sensory processing. So looking at how we process the world through our senses and how we translate that into better parenting that will help our children have better emotional and self-regulation. I'm so excited about that. So stay tuned. We're coming up. We're doing an article about it, and I'm going to be trying to talk about it in my in my reels and videos about how we use this new understanding that's very new science to help us support our children's self-regulation even better. So I'm really excited about that.
And everyone, you can check your website and your social media on Instagram. You do a lot of nice nuggets of information that is really, really, I find them very useful. And thank you again for, the books and the work that you do. And hopefully we'll see what comes up again. It's been really, I could talk to you for hours, but we'll have to end right now.
Well, I thank you for the work you do in the world to get this information out there for parents. And I can tell what an incredible parent you are. So thanks again, and be well. Take care.
Thank you.